Have you seen poster girl dresses on TikTok? Because we need to talk about it. There it is, like kind of like tiny, tiny doll size, very stretchy dresses that then somehow fit a full size woman.
Oh, have I seen them? They're everywhere.
I actually kind of want to wear one, but that is not the point. The point today is that that's like one side of TikTok that I'm seeing. And then I'm seeing this like very romanticized prairie core with almost like orthodox and super modest dressing. And the question is Gen Z getting more extreme on both ends than ever?
Yeah, our feeds are definitely chaotic. Like one swipe is you get these kind of soft girl vibes, like fluffy knits and these prairie skirts that you mentioned, kind of like sipping tea in a field type of vibe. And then next is someone basically in a sparkly string. And weirdly, like it all kind of makes sense. And it's mostly I feel driven by Gen Z and a lot of people think like are Gen Z like are they confused like what's happening out here because you see the same people embracing kind of like different sides of themselves and like showing up in so many different ways, but I think that they just don't really care about picking just one lane the same way that us millennials and older generations have done. It's very much giving this like I'll be whoever I feel like being today, and honestly I'm kind of feeling it. They grew up with Pinterest boards and TikTok, and it's been this kind of mood swings in aesthetic form since day one. So of course their style is also going to be all over the place. Like that is the aesthetic. Like some days you're just feeling soft and low key, and other days you want to just be like loud and hot and maybe even show a little bit of skin. Like we shift and we evolve and like we're cyclical. So and sometimes even in the same day.
I kind of relate to that though. Like I feel like I don't know if it makes me like a zillennial or trying to
Zennial,
be.
yeah. We are
But
actually by definition because we fall into that. We're both born 1993,
okay,
so
so
I
that makes
it does
sense
make sense.
because I do understand the want to switch and not fit into a box. Like I could see myself maybe one time wearing a poster girl dress and then the next day wearing a milkmaid dress, and that's been the discussion, right? And now I'm seeing videos on my feed actually where people are wearing milkmaid dresses to the club. Not that I'm going to the club, but it's interesting how those two things are blending, and some people are like, you can't do that, that's crazy, and people are like, says who though? So I kind of relate to this idea of not fitting in and even shocking the system a little bit.
Me too. And if you look at my wardrobe, you would probably think that I have some kind of a split personality because I have mega modest clothing and then I also have like very sexy pieces there as well. And I love wearing both. And in case you didn't notice, this week on House of Content, we're talking about this cultural split screen that we're seeing, especially with Gen Z. They're both very like beige core, but then they're also not suitable for work. They're dressing very modest, but then they might be very religious at the same time, more queer than ever. And so, what's happening with all of these sort of weirdly competing identities on social?
I mean, obviously, we have to take into account the world situation, right? Like, we're seeing the extremes on a political level, on an economic level. And we know from research as well that fashion and the way we dress always follows what's going on. And this is maybe a little bit far fetched, but I think about this almost like when we were teenagers and our parents were starting to put some rules on what we can and can't do. I think there's always that moment where you're doing the exact opposite. And so I think that is contributing to it, where we see a lot more conservative rules being put on us. Then the effect is to try and fight that through the things that we have control over.
Yeah, and similarly, I feel like because there was at a certain point, people were wearing a lot more revealing clothes, then like it kind of became a bit more refreshing to dress modestly and not show so much skin. So like it definitely like swings back and forth. But now we're seeing the full spectrum of it. Of course, because it's all on full display on social media. Like we weren't able to see that so much before. Let's say even like a few years ago, like when all we could really perceive were the people around us. But now we're getting exposed to so many different aesthetics at the same time. So in a way, I feel like that diversity has always existed to some extent, but it's even like amplified even more so now that we're seeing so many different types of expressions. So at the same time, we're also getting inspired by that and maybe even empowered by that. Like, oh, like it's okay to one day show up as, looking like a snack and and like another day you can, look like you're going to the church, and it's fine, and you don't have to be fitting into a specific mold. And I feel like we come from a time and age where like that we had the permission to explore different styles when we were teenagers. It's kind of expected you to go through
Mm-hmm.
different phases. Like I have tried all the colors of the rainbow on my hair, like, and I being the emo girl, the scene girl, like I've tried all the different things, and like but we were kind of expected to then like find that one specific style that then we
And
stick
stay on
to
your lane. Yeah.
and stay on
Yeah.
your lane. But now we have permission to like, try different things, and it's not weird. It's not like, wow, what are you, like a goth girl now? No, I'm just being me, and I just felt like wearing black and like, these, the different types of clothing today.
But I guess the question is, are we allowed to though? I mean, it depends on who's asking and answering, but did you see when Olivia Culpo had her wedding and ended up wearing a dress that's very modest?
So
And
conservative.
people had so many thoughts about it, and I think why that was because they had not seen her that way. And so they
Mhm.
felt like it was sort of inauthentic, or it signified a bigger move, maybe in her values or the way that she's planning to show up after that. But then also, the second dress that she switched into was very much, like Yumel said, looking like a snack and very revealing. So people have a weird reaction to someone switching it up because they still expect you to stay in that one mold. So it feels like, from our personal points of view, we can totally do whatever, but the response from others is still always like, what are you doing? Why are you
Mhm.
switching it up? And I don't think it's always from a negative place. It's just like
Mhm.
people like to understand, like, you're this, you're this, you're this. And I even have that from a work perspective where like someone's more of a hybrid. People are always trying to figure out which box to put the person just for
Mhm.
their own understanding. But it's not always coming from a negative place.
That's so true, because when I was interviewing for roles or maybe even discussing freelance, it was very tough for me to try to convey who I am, because again, I mostly do B2B marketing, but I can also do social strategy. I'm a copywriter by trade, and so everybody very much wants to, like, yeah, no, but you have to be one thing and you have to be good in one thing. So this is almost like a visual representation of that. The Olivia
Exactly.
Culpo thing is so fascinating, because I don't think it was just about her changing up her aesthetic, but what that meant symbolically, especially as we're
Yeah,
seeing this rise of the conservatism and trad wives, and everybody kind of
totally.
took it and run with it, and they were like, no, you're saying your message is bigger than you just having a high collar dress.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's also a very interesting conversation to be had around the politics of why
Mhm.
certain things are trending, because and I've been, I follow Brazilian talk quite a bit. I speak Portuguese, and I'm trying to keep it up. And so there's a really interesting conversation around, and it's not a coincidence that I'm wearing my hair curly today, but how the clean girl aesthetic in Brazil, there's almost like a revolt against it among certain creators, because they're saying that the roots of the clean girl aesthetic, of the clean skin and the straight hair pulled back, like all of that is actually like rooted in racism in many ways, because it is not a look that is attainable for black women, or for indigenous women, or women with very curly or afro hair. And I think it's so fascinating how, like, we have these extremes, but then there are like very heavy themes and politics playing underneath it. And I'm very conscious that we are three blondes discussing this here today, but I think there's more to it than just sort of like, oh, this is now trending. I'm wondering, have you noticed that in your feeds?
Oh, totally. I think that all of these trends come from somewhere as well. Like, even if you think about the milkmaid dress, now all the content we see is like, all these men just love when women wear these
Mm.
made dresses. But I was actually looking into where did this come from and what's the history behind it. And I think it's always important to understand because, time has passed, but there's always the starting point. So, in the same way as you're mentioning clean girl aesthetic, I think there's been a lot of discussion of where did that come from. We saw the Hailey Bieber uh, glazed nails trend or whatnot go viral, but actually there was a lot of Black creators that were saying like, no, 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 like some of this stuff has been a thing in our community, and you're just like giving it a different name and trying to turn it into a whole new thing without giving credit to the
Mm.
originators. And so I think with each of these micro trends, there is a bigger backstory that people
Hmm.
are forgetting and they're just running with the cookie butter hair or whatever it's called. And
Yeah.
it is a little tricky, I think, when people don't realize what they're participating in.
And also, like, I feel like sometimes, or like oftentimes, it doesn't necessarily come from a bad place. Like, people don't necessarily even have that historical knowledge, or they don't even think about it. And but I do think it's really important to have these conversations about where do these actually come from, and also the controversial side of it. And like, it doesn't mean that you can't embrace a certain type of hairstyle or makeup style, but like giving credit to who it belongs, I think it's super important. So that's why I do love the creators who do a great job at calling these, people out, and like, in a constructive way, and just like giving really informative pieces of content about where do these come from, so we all can have a better understanding when we're embracing those things.
And it's a funny thing, I just remembered, and if like, if on Brazilian talk, that's sort of the criticism around it was because like, oh, this comes from white American women. And then I just now remembered another conversation where part of, or a subset of the clean girl aesthetic, it was the sort of the slick back bun with the big
Yeah.
hoops, and then we had all of the Latino women on the app saying no, like you're appropriating actually our style, and we got even reprimanded for sometimes like wearing this, and you using that as a trend is not the way to go. And it's interesting to see
Mm.
how these sort of, as these trends like move through the algorithm into different countries, that they can mean completely different things. I think also, and if you can, again, I'm still kind of like coming out of all of the like the mountain of Coachella content. I want to kind of like
Mm.
switch gears a little bit. Do you feel like everybody is naked on your feeds right now? Is it just me? Like, I feel like a lot of the Coachella outfits, and for you to kind of like stop on the feed, it's like now it's just like little metal pasties, and that's pretty much it.
Yes, I definitely think so. And when I reflect on my own content, I have a hard time posting a photo from the beach in general,
Oh,
like
me
in
too.
a bikini. And I have been thinking about why that is because, it's so normalized in our feeds. And at the same time, I think there's a generational gap there too, because we were told not to put our lives on the internet. Like we grew up with that message,
Mm-hmm.
and Gen Z lived through this era where everything was already there. And I don't think there's one or the other being better, but I feel like I recognize how conservative I am about the outfits and the way that I dress, especially when I'm posting on social media. But at the same time, everything that I see is pretty extreme. And then from a brand perspective, we obviously work with a lot of brands. A lot of them are still looking at that stuff when they're evaluating brand safety and thinking about if someone represents their brand in the best way. And I also find that conversation really tricky because why are we not okay with a woman that's posted a bikini photo in their feed, but we're okay with a man that has posted a photo without a shirt on and that's not a flag? So it's a really complex discussion, but I do think that overall the answer is, do I think everyone's naked? Yes.
Yeah. And it's like, it's weird because, like, I mean, I'm sure if you would look at all of our explore pages, like, there's a lot of like half naked women in there, even though like I don't engage with those posts. but of course I find them beautiful, but I'm like, why am I getting so many of them? And like, luckily enough, I'm at the stage in my life where I don't feel like affected by that, and I'm like, oh, cute bikini, so I'm like, I'm still able to like draw inspiration from that. I guess that's why I keep getting those. But I actually had some reflections around that this week, because I did on Monday. I decided that I am going to get a car soon, and I'm like,
Big moves.
yeah, big moves. And I'm not a car person, and I'm kind of embarrassed to admit that I can only name like 5 car brands, so I never really cared about them. I don't have like a dream car. I mean, this week I've kind of developed one, but then like I was already ready to just go and buy a car, and everyone was like, hey Mel, like just like take your time, like like car, it's a big purchase, it's your first car, like. And I'm like, okay, fair. And then I decided to just I had this idea, like I want to see what other people think, that what's the car that I would vibe with, especially since I don't know that many cars and car
Oh, I
models. So I'm like,
replied to
okay,
that prompt.
yes, yes. And I still want to share those responses and like take the time. But I wanted to find a photo of me that really shows this like vibe that I'm like, that I'm really feeling, that I'm craving. I'm just craving this like freedom and like feeling like I can, like, because that's what car represents to me. Like it's like I can go like, and it's not a place for me to just go from place A to B. It's a place for me to go from A, B, C, like all the way to the Z, like I want to just like have the freedom, and I want it to be my soul car. So I found this photo of me that I never posted, but I had like saved it, which was taken from Joshua Tree. And I was just, it was like from behind, and I was in the cacti garden, and my hair was like, going in the wind. But I am wearing these short workout shorts. So like, before and I had this thought, like, is it okay for me to post this? Because it's like you can see my ass, in a way, like, it's like, and they are tight shorts, but at the same time it's like the stuff that I'm seeing, like I didn't feel like I was like, trying to do anything there. It was taken, the picture was taken from me. I never intended to post it, but I'm like, but it's a vibe. Like I wanna, like I'm feeling it, and I want people to help me find the right car. So I posted it, but I did feel weird about it. And I was thinking about it maybe for like an hour. Like, is this like too much, or
It
am
didn't
I like
even
okay
cross
to
my
post this?
mind when you posted it. It didn't even cross my
No.
mind. I was like, I'm just gonna tell you which car I think you are, and I guess I can share it on the podcast. I said it's a mint green Jeep. I feel like that is like so you, and also it would look really great in content.
I've got some insight on this, and we definitely need to be thinking in the convertible era. Like, I think the hair flowing in the air is already a hint, but more about this on Mel's own channels.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do a car episode. I will have nothing to give to that conversation, but moving on, I think one other to bring back to the topic, another sort of side of this extreme exhibitionism is also the emotional reveal, and I think these are both related. Both the physical reveal and the emotional reveal are related to the fact of like you have to keep giving more to the algorithm in order to stop the thumbs and have people watch your video all the way through. And I think it's almost like kind of pushing people to like share crazy stuff on social and using hooks. Like I saw just this one video yesterday where there was this woman with this guy and something around like, oh, she doesn't know it yet, but in 4 hours he will be dead. And I was sorry, what? I didn't watch it till the end because I was like, I can't. This is very triggering content. But I think it's not always a great thing that we're feeling like we can share everything online or feeling compelled to.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because the more that we see this extreme content, the more numb we get to it. And I always remind myself, this I've heard this before, that in social media companies, the people that are actually having to review some of the content that's flagged,
The
those
moderators.
positions or those roles that get exposed to this even more extreme content, they're not allowed to do that job for more than a specific period of time.
Oh,
There
wow.
is an absolute negative to being exposed to that. I hope that AI will kind of take on a lot of that in the future, but I think that's a good reminder that like it is real, that that the things that we're seeing do affect us deep down. So as we're scrolling, we might not even register how much of it does that to us, but it can be really harming for you. So I think that the more we see it, our kind of radar for what is extreme kind of changes, and that's a bit of the challenge.
And I want to offer another perspective because it's like, yeah, we're seeing creators get more and more vulnerable, like share their stories about maybe all of a sudden being dumped, and then they start sharing their story of how they start rebuilding themselves. And like there was this one girl who moved out of state, and like as soon as she arrived there, like her boyfriend was just like, yeah, I actually want to break up. And like, you know, she was, you know, expecting, like they had talked about engagement and all those things, and like she was there with all her stuff, and like, you know, and she then started creating videos around that, and all of those videos started blowing up about her experience of going through that in like emotional trauma, and like, you know, her rebuilding herself. And I'm like, wow, like that is so vulnerable, but at the same time, like it was just so real, it was so authentic, and people were like, you know, they were like, it was really resonating with people. I'm sure a lot of people were maybe going through the same thing, or even if they weren't, they were like, wow, like this is, you know, they wanted to be there to support her or just to follow her journey. So like I find it really like like I love when people get really deep and authentic, but I do
Mm-hmm.
struggle to do it myself. Like there are certain stories that I've thought myself like for a long time that like I feel like I should share this so I could make maybe other people feel, you know, more seen or more heard, or maybe even avoid these type of situations, like, you know, how I, you know, there was a guy that I rejected that, you know, like blackmailed me, and like, you know, said he was gonna do everything he could to, you know, destroy my life, and how he wished me dead. And, you know, and it was like crazy. It was crazy. And then he stalked me for like 2 years. And there was a time that I was thinking like of like, should I share this story? But at the same time, I'm like, I also don't want to like, you know, I want to protect my peace, so
Yeah.
I don't want to go into that. That would be like too much for me. I don't think it would help me really to
Mm-hmm.
like actually like help me in the process. I feel like for some people it can be helpful too, but I'd rather go through that in therapy and talk about it with my friends, because like otherwise it would make me feel too exposed, even if there
Mm.
could be some real value that I could provide to people. I'm like, no, that's where I'm drawing the line. I can't get personal on the internet. Well, clearly I did it here, but this was just a short story, so
Oh, but we are no, and but we're like, it's podcasts are for the girlies, so I think we're safe
yeah.
here. But I think and I think that's a really important distinction, because there is so many people are oversharing, I feel, just for the likes and the shares and the
Mm-hmm.
engagement. And I think it
Yeah.
really like blurs the line with like what is an authentic conversation and what is not. Like, for example, for me, I'm not ready to like share my private life and my private thoughts or traumas for engagement,
Yeah.
or like for like any type of cloud. That's why I like creating on LinkedIn, because I'm like, okay, I can talk about marketing all day
Yeah.
every day. I don't want to like, there are pieces of me that I want to keep offline forever.
Yeah. And I would say the worst examples of that are the some of the parent creators. I can't remember the name, but that have gotten into so much trouble by like
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
really like making them kids go through so much like
And the
suffering
kids
so
sue
that they
them
could.
after.
Yeah, and the kids sue them
Yeah.
after. Like there was this video I'm sure you've seen, like where this girl, I mean, I guess their like dog died or something, and she was like, cry to the camera, and
Oh,
like,
yeah, 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 I've
uh,
heard of that. It's a
yeah,
documentary, I think. Yeah.
yeah, but it's like I think that's just another whole theme that we could get into. But like
Mm-hmm.
this time let's steer away from that. Let's save that for another episode.
I think now it's a good bridge to maybe talk about what is this sort of multifaceted personalities or interests or even identities. What does that mean for brands? What do you think? It's making like a
I
brand
think I
marketer's job
already
so
started
hard.
talking about yeah,
Yeah.
I already started talking about this with the bikini example.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of brands have pretty strict vetting criteria for the people that they work with, but there's been an increasing conversation around, some of the things that would have been flags before are just things that everyone's doing now. So are we not
Yeah.
going to work with somebody because they're talking about their views on certain topics, or because they're posting certain kinds of videos, because most of them are doing that. And
Hmm.
so it's a really fine line. And also, I think the assumption that if a brand works with a person, they co-sign every single thing that that person has ever
Yeah.
posted and said is not exactly right. And so I do think it's more difficult. But to Mel's point, there could also be a benefit to working with people that are authentically sharing more personal things as
Mm-hmm.
brands try to figure out how do they start to act on their values in a more deeper way and connect with their community and audience.
I 100% agree with you, Yanni. And I do think that brands need to have some more flexibility and stop playing it so safe. Like I think especially Gen Z, like they're way too smart for that. Like if you're trying to please everyone with this like watered down like aesthetic, like it's just not gonna land. Like you're gonna run out of people that you can even collaborate with, and like and then we just have a bunch of these like brand safe creators who doesn't
Mm-hmm.
actually have any opinion, and they're just like so generic that people don't even care about them in the end. And then this generation just really gets the nuance. They live in contradictions. So instead of trying to simplify things, I think brands should either just lean all the way into the bold vibe or like embrace the chaos. Like of course you're going to still like have to draw the line somewhere. You need to figure out whatever that means for your brand specifically, but I do think that there needs to be more flexibility, because otherwise you're not going to be able to just resonate with your audience. You're not going to be able to build meaningful creator campaigns, which is one of the keys to great marketing these days.
And I think another facet of that is also understanding that if you are looking into these different identities, you need to go deep with the cultural research and understanding and not just go there with like a surface level rot language and like hope that now you're speaking to Gen Z. Actually, one of the people who originally talked about this subject of this like Gen Z dichotomy, Kaleo, who's a great cultural strategist, I just wanted to give him a shout out because the idea for this episode actually came from one of his LinkedIn posts. But I think like what he detailed was exactly the idea of there is no one single truth for your audience, and you kind of like you have to do that legwork to uncover what that truth is to really be successful in talking to all of these millions of different niches. Finally, to close out, I do have a picture on the house and I want to hear yours as well if you have one. I would love to see one of these like major retail brands like H&M, who does a lot of collaborations. I would love for them to do a capsule collection for example, for Ramadan, or hiring an Orthodox Jewish designer to do a modest line of dresses, because I find something very beautiful in how these cultures celebrate that aspect. And I think it's time for us to see it in mainstream as well, and also like maybe expand it to people who are not religious but just love the look. I think that would be great to see.
I love that. And I keep thinking about the fashion part of this. And so I don't have a specific brand in mind, but I want to see a collection that's chaotic. Like usually even when we look at the drops that some brands have, they're very consistent. They're like a collection of the milkmaid dresses. But I
Mm-hmm.
want one that's like made
Both.
for the person that switches it up. Exactly. Where it's
Yeah.
like
Love it.
it's all these things that technically have nothing to do with each other in terms of the vibe they're giving, but they could be for the person. And maybe there are some amazing creators or personalities that would inspire that. And it could be like based off of their hyper niche occasions that
Mm-hmm.
they've kind of been to or have happening in their lives. I think that would be such a great way to kind of showcase the fluidity of a person and their style, and then create all these stories around, and maybe even the content that you could do, like other creators then like wearing that collection, they would take it into a completely different direction. Like whatever the dress for someone else's very hyper niche dog party would be, someone else sees a completely different world with that piece of clothing. I don't know if this makes
I
any
can see
sense,
this as a
but
duet, like
there's
TikTok
something.
duets, seeing like the split screen
Yeah,
of
just
again
like
like
chaotic, but just highlighting this fact that you don't have to fit into a mold would be so cool, even from the perspective of how the collection
I'm
is
buying it.
designed.
It's so funny because my mind is kind of the same place. I wasn't thinking about like any specific brand or product, but I was picturing this kind of like a split screen type of content where you can, you know, show your kind of quiet power on the other side and loud expression on the other, and have any type of brand kind of empower creators to show the size of themselves that they typically don't, because you know, a lot of times, especially creators who are really just trying to be like, you know, a certain way and only like, you know, trying to fit into this box, kind of empower them to step out of that and show the whether it's the more like louder or expressive side of themselves that they typically don't. Maybe we ask them to show the parts they don't post about, the outfit that they wore for themselves but like would never put on the internet, something like that, and kind of like embrace the duality of their personalities. So I'm like,
Totally.
my mind is in the same place. So like just kind
Mhm.
of like understanding that it's there's no one size fits all, and there's just so many beautiful sides of us that needs to be seen.
I love that. And with that, we will wrap this episode of House of Content. If you are hopping between identities, can you send us your videos? Our DMs are always open, and remember to follow. And you can also comment on these, by the way, on Spotify. We'd love to hear what you think. But thank you for listening to House of Content.